Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fintech Combine. I am your host, Kris Kovacs, and this is the series where we talk with and sometimes about community-based institutions, their digital and business transformation projects, and we meet the innovators, entrepreneurs, and fintechs that make it all possible. On this episode, we're speaking with David Metz, the founder and CEO of Prizeout, about how his company is empowering credit unions to deliver on the reward of doing banking with a credit union. Like how I did that. So if you're ready, let's suit up and get out on the field. David, it is very nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your company, Prizeout?
Sure. My name's David Metz. I am CEO and founder of Prizeout. Prizeout's about 7 years old. The actual original idea came out of a previous company that I had. It was basically a trivia company where people could challenge each other in trivia for real money. And what we were realizing is that every time someone won money, they had the option to withdraw that money to digital gift cards, and they really liked it. So over time, I realized there was an opportunity for people that had a balance to withdraw to digital gift cards. And the reason why they withdrew to digital gift cards is because we would give bonuses on top of that. So I went to my board and I said, don't kill me, but we are going to pivot from trivia to fintech. And they were super supportive. That was 7 years ago. And it's kind of been a wild ride since then, but very successful and fruitful one.
That had to be really scary, potentially, right? This big pivot moving from essentially a gaming service, right? Or part, connected to a gaming service to being something involved with fintech. Talk to me a little bit about how you walked through and made that decision.
Yeah, the trivia company was doing well, but kind of stumbling upon this opportunity. The total size of it was so massive, and it wasn't kind of I woke up one morning and I said, I'm doing this. It was lots of little steps that led to it, and a lot of conversations with my board and shareholders. And then when we did pivot, we then used that product for gaming. And we're still in gaming today. It was about 4 years ago that we started working in financial services, but it was kind of adjacent to gaming. It was just, instead of being the gaming company, we were now providing the ability to withdraw your funds via our product. And then from there, because the core premise is that people can use their balance to buy digital gift cards, and those digital gift cards have bonus value. Then 4 years ago, we started talking to financial partners, predominantly in the credit union space. And they were like, wait a second, you allow people that have money to increase the value of that money. And the interesting thing about credit union industry is that the vast majority spend is on the debit side, and debit card users don't get rewarded for their spend. So you're talking about trillions of dollars in spend that's going unrewarded. So the premise was pretty simple. If you do your purchases through these digital gift cards, we'll give you bonus value, which ended up being cash back right back into their account. So now you're allowing people groceries, fuel, clothing, whatever it might be, the ability to earn cash back. And these are people that, especially during this inflationary period, it really means a lot to them. Then that evolved to then taking over the whole rewards program, everything from credit cards to creating new abilities to earn money. So it was a wild ride from trivia to gaming to credit unions and each one, like when I went to trivia, didn't know much about trivia, but thought there was an opportunity. Didn't know much about fintech, but there was an opportunity. Knew nothing about credit unions, but had a conversation and realized there was an opportunity there. So it's always been learning and pivoting along the way. We are firmly implanted in the credit union industry at this moment. Didn't know much about them when we started, but now I know a ton, and to be frank, kind of fallen in love with them, love the purpose, love what they do for their communities. So I'm a huge fan and feel pretty grateful to have stumbled into this.
So most reward programs are tied to a particular processor or a particular, be that debit or credit. Talk to me a little bit about how your service interacts with a credit union's preferred card processor.
So what's interesting is that what makes us unique is we integrate both with the core. If you understand what the core of a bank or a credit union is, that's where the ability to move money, all the data sits. We also integrate with online banking, right? And it's very fragmented. There's so many different core providers. There's so many different online bankings, right? So it took a few years to do those integrations. But what we found is that most reward programs, number one, are outsourced, right? And a lot of times they're not even behind online banking. So if a user accrues points or something, they have to leave the ecosystem, right? So that was kind of like table stakes, right? So for us, it's like, okay, number one, we have to be behind their online banking. The member wants to own that relationship. The more they engage with the app or online, the more they can, open up a CD or a credit card or something like that. So that was table stakes. The other thing is credit unions don't really control their data. And as a result, they can't personalize. They can't really differentiate. If you look at like every reward program, we recently launched credit cards. So it's kind of top of mind. Pretty much credit card rewards are all the same. 2% groceries, 1% fuel, 3% travel, right? They all have the same amount of interchange, right? So they really can't do much. So some of the things credit unions are starting to do now that we've allowed them to control their data is, and I'll give you an example. Credit unions were derived from what they call segments. So like 100 years ago, a group of people, it could be teachers, firemen, military, IBM workers, whatever it might be, right? So there's a lot of military credit unions out there, right? So one of the cool things is that military credit unions can say, hey, if you swipe our credit card at a veteran-owned business, we'll give you 5%, right? So now it fits into their ethos. There's a lot of credit unions that do a lot of small business banking in their community. So now the credit union can say, if you swipe our credit card at a business that banks with us, we'll give you extra cash back, right? So now it starts to differentiate. We always say, be a first-rate version of yourself, not a second-rate version of Cap One or Amex or something like that, right? So those are some of the points that really allow them to differentiate and take control of their rewards program.
Are there experiential differences that you're introducing as well, being now that you're a part of the online banking solution, right? That's obviously a really big feather in your cap. That means they're not having to go out through a single sign-on somewhere else or, in order to access that. Are you able to build in additional experiences for them tied to that access?
Yeah, one of the things when we kind of looked under the hood, some of the things that jumped out, one is that we only deal with cashback. We overwhelmingly, we heard from members that like, I don't want a PhD in math to figure out, I've got 12 million points is $1.32, right? So like, I don't want to figure that out, so everyone wants cash, right? That was number one. Number two, a lot of the programs that are doing cashback put it into their account daily, right? And what we found is that the member doesn't even realize they're getting it. Right. So if you're giving a reward, you want your member to know it and feel it and appreciate it. I always use the example here in New York, we have lots of bodegas and every bodega has a tip jar, right? I would never put $1 in the tip jar if his back is to me. I want him to see me like, I got you, buddy, right? So like, if you're going to have a rewards program, you're going to give millions of dollars away every month. Make sure that the member knows it and appreciates it, right? Yeah. So one of the things is we created a balance that lives right on their online banking. So every time the member logs on, they see that balance growing, right? And every month they can withdraw it, right? So now you have that emotional thing. It's funny, one of the CUSO has a rewards program where they only allow you to withdraw your cash back once a year. And it was extremely successful, right? Because that balance got up, right? It's not about the money. It's like, what is that money going to lead to? Right. So by letting that balance get bigger, $282, you're like, now I'm going to that dinner I always wanted to go. Now I'm buying that new pair of sneakers. Right. So it's that emotional attachment. If you're getting 32 cents, 72 cents every day, it's almost meaningless. Right. So making sure you have that emotional anchor was really important as well. And we wouldn't be able to do that if we weren't behind online banking as well. And also everything's white labeled. So like it is your bank that's giving you this, right? We don't want to be part of the conversation. We just want to power everything. So that's really important as well.
A lot of startups, a lot of fintechs in particular, do a lot of work to try to get behind the login for online banking. Can you tell me a little bit about what your strategy was to make that possible?
Hard work. And, we were lucky to partner early on with some of the biggest credit unions in the industry. And a lot of times the online banking, they won't listen to you as a startup, right? But if one of the bigger institutions back you and say, I want this, they tend to move, right? So I think we were really lucky to have the support of some of the bigger credit unions to do that, right? And it's not necessarily the online banking fault. It's like they have a roadmap just like everyone else, right? So that early backing was huge. And one of the things we did early on, we created a CUSO. The credit unions invested in the CUSO, and they invested in us. So now that they have skin in the game, they wanted to make sure that the product was. So they really helped us getting on those online bankings because they could take forever, right? And we really focused kind of a top down. So we really focused on the bigger credit unions because I think the top 300 credit unions is like 80% of all the assets, right? Yeah. So and then once you narrow it down to that, they're all kind of using Alchemy, Fiserv, FIS, Lumen, Q2, NCR, you know what I mean? Jack Henry, the usuals, right? So there's not that many, right? So then we could really narrow it down and be hyper-focused.
If I'm a credit union, what kind of results am I going to see by deploying Prizeout inside of my online banking solution?
Yeah, so we have a couple of products, and we aim to control the whole rewards ecosystem. So the first product we ever launched was the ability for members to log onto their online banking and buy digital gift cards. The reason why they buy digital gift cards is because we give them bonus on top. If they're maybe buying a Nike digital gift card and they get 8%. So if they buy a $100 Nike digital gift card, we put 8% right back into their account. Right. So what's interesting about that, because we integrate with the core, when we say buy a digital gift card, we're just debiting their checking account. So it doesn't run on the rails. Right. So there is no interchange, but because it's being funded by the merchant, we're able to pay a rev share to the credit union, often 3 or 4 times more than they would make on interchange. So they're making more money on those transactions, but more importantly, 80% of their users that are only using debit card now gets access to cash back for doing spend that they normally would do. So that was the first product that we ever launched, right? That's super successful. So day one, every transaction is going to be more profitable, and some of your most vulnerable members are now getting access to cash back. And you hear the word financial wellness, they just need money, right? Like how can we get them money, right? And this is the easiest way. Number 2, we created a product called Actions. So basically, because we integrate with the core, we can create actions, which basically are things that the credit union want their members to do. It's usually around engagement, enroll in e-statements, set up direct deposit, log on to online banking X amount of times, do this many debit card swipes, right? Because we integrate with the core and we get that data, we can create that. So now your credit unions, does not matter if you're a credit card, debit card, if you engage with your credit union, you are now getting rewarded for it. And then most recently, the last part was credit card. That was kind of the last frontier of the rewards ecosystem. And then when we looked under the hood, like I said, we realized all of these things have gone stale, right? Like you have to leave the online banking system. Everything points. Nobody wants a branded credit union mug for like using their credit card, right? Let's be honest. So, when we looked under the hood, and a lot of times it's the credit unions that are asking us because we have such a great partnership. Hey, you've built these great products. Can you look at credit card, right? And again, it's just been neglected for so long. So now that we've introduced credit card rewards, we have a huge pipeline of partners that are now signed up for that. So that was kind of the last part of the whole rewards ecosystem. And a lot of times they're using different vendors for each part of it, right? And it becomes fragmented. Once it becomes fragmented, the user experience becomes confusing, right? So having one rewards vendor becomes really, really powerful for them.
It sounds like your actions in particular are tied to many of kind of the onboarding steps that we would typically have for a new member. Are you seeing that those actions and the rewards for those actions, are they enticing or encouraging more members or deeper engagement with the credit unions?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say onboarding because it's so funny. A lot of credit unions talk about we need to grow, we need more new users. But when you really look deep, a lot of the users are unengaged. Maybe they're indirect loan users, right? Yes. And they just became a member, right? So, there are huge swaths of members that need to be activated, right? So focus on one of the things we learned is like in the first 60 days is the most important part. Like, so when a user's onboarding, incentivizing them to do those things, setting up direct deposits, setting up your online thing, enrolling in e-statements, doing all those things, because you have that finite moment where you have an interested member. So onboarding is a huge part of it. And we've seen great results of that, right? So like, again, we actually have a roundtable tomorrow on IDL. That's a whole nother thing. It's like, how do you get those indirect loan members re-engaged? Because when we first partnered, we're like, oh, here's a credit union. They have 400,000 members. Awesome. And then we're like, not really, right? Because then
what's a member?
When you start digging deeper, it's like, who's an active member, right? Who's engaged digitally, all of that stuff, right? So I think focusing on kind of taking care of your household before you go external, look internal, and do your best to get all those people to be good users. That's usually step one. And that's what Actions really does.
How did you go about learning? I mean, part of this process is you learned this credit union industry, right? You know the difference between members and indirect members. You know CUSOs, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, was it the large credit unions that you originally started working with who shepherded you through this, or where did you get your information about how to work with credit unions? Is it just earned experience?
It's wild because I didn't know what a credit union was, but it's like taking the red pill in the Matrix, and now like everywhere I go now I see credit unions, right? It's like that old adage, like how many red cars did you see on your way to work? Like, I don't know, but like you probably saw 12 and you didn't realize it, right? So my first encounter at credit unions was Intera Credit Union and the CEO, Amy Sink. And Amy has been an incredible shepherd and coaching and teaching me all about the industries and teaching me the right way, right? And I think I'm also a history major, so I love the backstories. It's all like 100 years ago, 8 people threw, $7.32 in a cigar box, right? And
so it works.
As an entrepreneur, they're the OG entrepreneurs, because 100 years ago, they couldn't get loans. They couldn't get access. So they took it upon themselves. A group of them got together, right? It's usually less than $1,000, right? And loaned each other money. Hey, Bob, here's $1.25. Pay me back when you can, right? And now they're all multi-billion-dollar institutions, right? So that is what every startup wants. They raise money, small groups get together to solve a problem, and your goal is to be, these billion-dollar entities, and they've all done that. So I love it. And I love the ethos of them. I'll tell you a quick story that I just learned. I won't name the credit union, but it's probably a top 10 credit union. They told me a quick story about, they had a member who walked into their branch, and they were about 80 years old, and they were just sitting there for an hour, and the manager came out, and the manager said, "You okay, sir?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm just resting." He's like, "Can I bring you some water?" He's like, "Sure." Another hour goes by, and the elderly man gets up and he walks to the teller, slips them a note. The teller opens a note and it says, "I'm robbing you. Give me $1,000." Right? So the manager comes out and the manager says, "What are you doing?" Right? He's like, "I've fallen behind my bills. I don't know what to do." Right? And he's like, "We're going to give you the $1,000. Come back tomorrow. We'll set up a plan for you." Right? There is no other. You're telling me the big banks? He would be probably on death row if it was any other industry other than the credit unions, right? So that humanity, right?
Wow.
And you're talking this credit union is over 20 billion, right, in assets.
Yeah.
Right?
What a story!
It's amazing, and they always say there's 3 things that they care about: credit, collateral, and character, right? You don't hear that often. So. That's right. I've learned a lot. I always tell people, it's like, if you've ever seen It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey, that's a credit union.
It is indeed.
So
it is indeed.
I've definitely learned a lot. And again, like I said before, I'm very appreciative to have partnered with them and to help, every day people earn cash back. You remember 140 million Americans are credit union members. So it is a massive industry.
Yeah. Yeah. There aren't many places where a potential robbery becomes an installment loan.
It's funny. They were like, they should just open up a credit card. They'd get access to more capital and they won't go to jail for 5 to 10. It's a much more efficient way.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So you talked a little bit about taking an investment from a CUSO. So I want to touch on that a little bit, because to some, the concept of a CUSO is a new idea, right? They've never heard that before. Walk me through a little bit about kind of what it means for a Prizeout to be a CUSO.
So Prizeout is not a CUSO.
Oh,
In order to be a CUSO, for those that don't know what a CUSO is like an SPV, right? It's a way for credit unions to invest, and credit unions are allowed to invest up to 1% of their assets. So if they're a $10 billion credit union, they can invest up to $100 million, right? So they have to do it through a CUSO. And what a CUSO, all that means is that it's 51% of the business has to go be with credit unions. Before we started partner credit unions, we worked in lots of industries, as I mentioned, gaming, et cetera, which is very profitable for us. And it's a big part of our business. So when we partnered, we could not meet that, right? So the credit unions created a CUSO, invested in the CUSO, and that CUSO owns the license to all of our business. So everything flows through the CUSO. So as a parent, and that CUSO sits on our board as one member and one entity. So
gotcha. So you have a subsidiary that's a CUSO.
Yes, that's exactly.
And then, but Prizeout itself is not.
Yes. And that CUSO elects one person to sit on our parent board, because my parent board has more traditional startup investors that are more about ROI, where the credit union is more about ROM, return on member, right? They want products that improve their members' lives and allow them to compete, right? So their view of success is different. It doesn't mean they have to be, so far apart. You can create great products that people love. If you do that, it's, the revenue and everything comes, right? So I think it's been a good addition for our board.
That's excellent. So what do you think the future looks like for rewards? You're really defining it now, right? You've said, listen, there's these legacy systems out there, solutions out there that are stale, and nobody wants a golf club with their credit union's logo on it, right? So what do you think the future of rewards looks like?
I think it's going to be more direct relationships with the merchant. You saw JP Morgan, you've seen Amex do it, right? Going direct to the merchant. I think the merchants don't realize the credit union industry exists to the extent that we do. And the one thing, I don't think the credit unions necessarily do a great job of marketing themselves, but I think they do something that's even greater. They genuinely care about their members, and their members genuinely love their credit unions. And that has built extreme trust, right? So by merchants coming in and allowing the credit unions, allowing them to go direct and giving them offers, I think that could be huge, especially with the unknown world of interchange and where that's headed. They're going to need to find ways alternatively to fund the rewards, right? So I think that's going to be really important.
Do the credit unions have to go out and source the merchants, or is that something Prizeout does on their behalf?
We do that for them. So one of the things we're starting to slowly roll out is for the credit union to own a category. And I'll give you an example. Let's say DoorDash wants to own grocery, right? So for that quarter, DoorDash funds all of the grocery spend, right? So they're behind the online banking. They're part of everything from billboards to in-branch marketing, and say, this is what our credit card program looks like, or even our debit card program looks like this quarter, right? And it's directly funded. And because we're integrated with the data, we can say the opportunity, hey, DoorDash, there's 1 million members, 100,000 of them had spent at DoorDash before, right? And then post-quarter, you can say, here are the results. Here's the attribution. We got another 50,000 members, increased spend, and all of that. So DoorDash is just an example of a merchant we can partner with. But I think that's the future. And you can only do it if you're behind online banking, and you can only do it if you get that pure set of data. So I think that could be really, really valuable.
Do you have credit unions express concerns about showing brands other than their own inside of their online banking system?
Yeah, that's why you need two to tango. It has to be, it can't be, it just shows up. It is a true partnership, right? So it has to be something that they sign off. If it's a crypto company, and the credit union says, no, we don't want to do that. That's not what we're about. it won't happen, right? So,
Gotcha.
but that's what makes it so valuable, because if you are allowed into that walled garden, it is extremely valuable. If the credit union says this merchant's okay with us, that is incredibly valuable, because how it exists now, it's just like offer malls, right? Where the user comes on, there's no real attachment, right? They're just deal hunting like they used to do with Groupon. They're not actually becoming loyal members. And the last part I would say, I think there's a massive opportunity on debit card, because no one pays attention to debit, especially those that are over 10 billion, because interchange is too low, right? But what you see with debit card users is they're incredibly loyal, right? When you look at Amex offers like Amex or Chase, what we found is a lot of those users have like 7 or 8 cards, and they're just using the ones that give them the best deal at the moment, right? When you deal with debit card and you deal with credit union, there tend to be one card, and that's their primary card, right? So when they choose a brand, they're extremely loyal to it. So I think there's a huge opportunity for merchants and for credit unions there as well.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit. You've talked about how you started as a trivia company, then went into gaming, and then went into I should say the prizes that came out of it. Talk to me. What did you do before that? Talk to me about your career. How did you get to where you are today?
Started on Wall Street. Well, even back there, both my parents are entrepreneurs. They had an irrigation company. Blue collar kid, right? I don't think my dad graduated high school. I think he dropped out at 15. Incredibly successful now, but everything was entrepreneurial. So, they say, are you born an entrepreneur? Is it in your DNA, or do you learn it? I think I have both. Both my parents are entrepreneurs, and I sat at the dinner table every night watching it, good, bad. I remember there were Christmases where we didn't get presents because my parents had to make a decision. Do we pay employees or do we do Christmas? So seeing that sacrifice, right? You can read books, you can watch movies, right? But unless you really live it, then I went to a prep school as a blue collar kid, didn't know what a Windsor knot was. So, never read Chronicles of Narnia, right? So a total outsider, but learning how the world works, right? Like, how is this world work? Like, the richest person in my town, owned the pizzeria, right? I didn't know what CEOs or doctors or lawyers or that. So learned a lot there. I ended up getting a Division I athletic scholarship to college. So super competitive. I think you have to be competitive and be able to withstand pain to be an entrepreneur. Worked in Wall Street for about 8 years, started a company in 2006, exited in 2008, which was nice. And then I was kind of like, I'm never going back, right? Once you get a taste of it, started a board game with my brother that was successful. You can see that I have no prior knowledge to an opportunity, and I just jump in, right? Board games, fintech, trivia, course, online banking, right? Especially today, you can learn things so quickly, right? And if you know how to sift through the nonsense and get to what really matters, it doesn't matter what you're dealing with. So it's been a wild journey. There's probably 12 other layers to that, but that's kind of the super high level.
Okay, so I immediately have 2 questions. What sport and what position?
Lacrosse. It's one of the few sports that a 5'8" kid can get a D1 scholarship to. Maybe coxswain or
especially out of the Northeast, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, definitely in the Northeast. Yeah. And then I played midfield.
Midfield. Okay. And what was the name of the board game you created with your brother?
It was called Gaggle. So we was really successful, sold a bunch of copies, learned a lot about doing business with family. And really it was trivia, but we made it for everyone. Trivia doesn't have to be Jeopardy, where it's very academic in nature. Everyone knows a lot about something. It could be reality television. It could be about, auto mechanics. It could be about cooking. It could be whatever, right? So we wanted to make something that was accessible by everyone in terms of whatever their skill set was. So that was a fun project. It checked a box, and that's kind of what eventually led to the trivia app as well.
Yeah. So what did you take away from those that you brought to Prizeout when you really started going with Prizeout? What did you take away from those experiences? Right, those exits, your sports.
just keep going. Adversity, right? If I had $1 for every person that told me I've got a business idea and then nothing ever comes from it, right? Everyone says that. I've come up with the company name. I'm like, oh, it's pretty much sold already. Like there are so many little things. So like how to handle with adversity, right? I think it also allows who to surround yourself with. Like if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, who you surround yourself is so important. Who your spouse is, right? Because when you go on this journey, you're not going by yourself, right? You're usually bringing people along, right? So you want to make sure that you have the right people along with you, right? It's the same thing when you're raising money. Like culture isn't just your employees, it's also your cap table, right? Because those are the people that you're going to lean on, or those are the people that are constantly calling you and saying, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on? So you really have to choose that really, really wisely. Because everyone at the company will tell you, I have a saying, business is really easy. People are difficult, right? That's the challenging part, right? So make sure that, even the best of people are always going to have friction, right? So make sure the people you surround yourself are the people of the same like-minded philosophy, character, integrity, all of those things.
So when you're hiring somebody, what is it you look for?
It's changed so much, right? In 2020, everything was remote, right? In 2021, you had kids coming out of college with 4 job offers saying, this is what I want. I'm like, what? I thought you were applying for this. Now it's like, please, sir, I'll take anything. You see people with 10, 15-year experiences applying for junior years. So I've seen the gambit happen, right? You want people that still have that work ethic, that know what work ethic is, right? That have had struggle, right? And then culture, right? Being a smaller startup, less than 60 people, one bad apple can really have a huge impact, right? So we would rather hire slowly and get it right than make those mistakes, because it's tough to unwind, right? And then you have to rehire. So just be really, really careful. And I would value ceiling and integrity more than anything. We have a couple of sayings here. We say you have to have IQ, EQ, BQ, and PQ to succeed here, right? You have to be smart. You have to have IQ, right? That's non-negotiable. You have to have EQ. Can you walk into a room and read it, right? Do you know what's going on here, right? BQ, do you understand money? Have you ever had to buy your own things, right? Like, has money always just been endless for you, right? And like, have you ever worked a summer job and you're like, now I can do this, right? Now I can, do you understand how hard that is, right? So when you spend money, you realize, oh my gosh, right? Like, you're much more accountable for it. And the last thing is PQ. Do you understand how Prizeout works, right? And I'm always saying we're based in Manhattan. Our partners aren't, right? This is kind of Never Land here in Manhattan, right? The person that's living in Goshen, Indiana, right? Like their views are very different, right? Doesn't mean you can't do the job, but you have to have empathy as well, right? Can you put yourself in their shoes, right? Me being a blue collar kid to fancy prep school, all the way to through I've seen every level of it. So really has allowed me to create that empathy for everyone. I remembered riding on bikes and putting flyers with my brother, promoting my parents' business, right? Like, have you been through all of that? So without that empathy, it's really hard to succeed here. So those are just some of the things I look for.
You probably have more than one summer of digging ditches, I would imagine, too.
My hands are so soft now. They're like, because the first week you just tear your hands apart. And then 2 weeks later, that's where the calluses grow and all of that, right? Also, my dad was the boss, right? I remember being in trucks with the guys and everyone poo-poos the boss, right? No matter what, I've sat there, even though I also know that my dad didn't give us Christmas presents to pay them, right? So I've seen that, right? So as a CEO, you understand that, right? Not everyone has all the context that I have, right? So when people get frustrated, it's, you can't take it so personally. I always wonder, they say large, a disproportionate amount of CEOs are sociopaths. I'm like, are they made that way? Right? Or do they, my goal is to whatever the exit is not to become that, right? And maintain my humanity and things like that, right? But it is tough, right? But I just seeing all that from many different angles has given me a lot of perspective that, many people wouldn't have. The last thing I would say too about hiring somebody is that everything can be learned nowadays, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you're a 10-year expert in something. With AI now, it doesn't matter. I much more value like those intangibles, character, work ethic over than experience, right? Because I think that's being devalued. Oh, like I've spent 8 years getting that information. Nowadays you can get that information pretty quickly. So I definitely lean much more towards those intangibles, like character, hardworking, ingenuity, thinking outside the box, all of that stuff, more so than I do experience.
How is AI affecting, beyond looking at experience, right? Yeah. How else is AI affecting your business today?
It's funny because we're always getting hit up with private equity. And we're not in a position where we want to exit or anything right now, but it's good to learn from them. And you see what the new shiny object is, right? So now there's 2 words in the last 6 months I've learned. One is AI proof. Are you AI proof, right? And embedded distribution. And I'll tell you each one. AI proof is like, is AI going to disrupt you tomorrow, right?
Right. Can somebody with AI rewrite your system tomorrow and replace you?
They can't for 2 reasons. It's because of the deep integrations and because of the industry. Healthcare and financial data is the most holy grail of sacred data that people protect, right? It will be a while before they unleash AI on that, right? And then embedded distribution, like, are you in something and able to have distribution because of it that somebody tomorrow can't, right? And that is because of our core and online banking that has created that moat for us, right? So, but AI is here. It's not going away. It's going to disrupt a lot of businesses. It wasn't by design. Sometimes it's better to be lucky and good. Like we have already done the work by the time everyone started realizing it was going to disrupt everything. So it is going to disrupt. It's going to be a lot slower in finance than it is going to be in other industries. So we have this window still where we do feel like we have a moat.
Good advice. Good advice. So, Mike, it sounds like you have an amazing product. We certainly encourage everybody to check it out. If somebody's interested in learning more about Prizeout, how do they get hold of you? How do they get a hold of your team?
Just reach out to me, right? I'm very David@Prizeout, supereasy.com. Shoot me an email. Happy to answer questions. Or if you're interested in a demo, always happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Kris. I appreciate the time.
That was a fantastic episode. Thank you very much for joining us. If you like this content, please like and subscribe on your platform of choice. Thank you for being here. We will see you next time.